Clicking the Conditions tab opens the Conditions browser, which is used to access tide level and tidal current predictions, as well as weather forecasts and observations. It initially opens showing the text forecast of the NOAA VHF forecast when the computer has internet access. This requires internet access, but when it does, you can access the NOAA forecast, the NOAA VHF forecast for any place in U.S. coastal waters. Simply zoom out and click on that area and you'll see it displayed here. Clicking the Graphical Weather button, Coastal Explorer has the ability to display graphical weather data. Clicking the Download button when you have internet access accesses our servers and downloads weather data for which regions you select and which data and which time. And once it's downloaded, you can select which data to display, which layer of the data to display on the screen. You can zoom in and out to see what it looks like at various levels. This is a free service we provide through our servers. If you have the ability to get a GRIB file onto the boat or onto the computer, you don't have internet access but you do have some kind of single sideband email capability, you can download a GRIB file from SailDocs or one of those places, then we can open it here and we can be a viewing program for that as well. Coastal Explorer also shows observations. Again, when there's internet access, various locations are actually available via stations. So here we're seeing the Port Townsend station right there, that red dot. If we click on some of these other icons, the blue dots are buoys. So now we're seeing the Fort Worden buoy. We can see it over there in the browser if we wanted to. Clicking the tide level icon opens up the tide station closest to the boat at this point on the screen. You can see it right there. It's a diamond. They're a little hard to see at times, so clicking the Highlight Stations button shows them a little bit better. So there it is, 8.36 feet, about 8.2. If I click on one of these tide diamonds, it opens up a small browser window, a tooltip almost. It tells me the current state of the tide there. It's 8.4 feet and falling, shows me a graph of today. If the browser isn't open at the top of the screen, clicking this tooltip will open the browser to the current time. Coastal Explorer lets you see tide level and tidal current predictions for times other than right now by using a concept of virtual time. The virtual time affects the tide bars, the arrows that you see here, and the current arrows that are displayed on the chart, as well as the tide or current graph seen in the conditions browser. Normally virtual time is the same as current time, real time, right up here, 1925. But as it changes, these icons will all change to reflect the current conditions. If I want to switch to virtual time, I can go ahead an hour, and we see how the current is changing, or the tide level is changing. And when we're in virtual time mode, the time is highlighted in yellow. You can go an hour ahead, a day ahead. If you wanted to look at some day someplace farther than that, you might just click the calendar icon there, pick the day you'd like to see that. And you click on the chart. Now all the icons on the screen are reflecting the conditions at that moment in time. You can contract or expand the graph itself. How do you get out of virtual time? Click the Go to Now button. Puts us back in current time. Now I've left the highlight marks on, so I'm going to turn that off. And perhaps I don't want to see a browser. I just want to see what the conditions are right this minute. If I click on the chart wrench and I select Extra Layers, tide stations and current stations are also available. I click Tide Stations, and you notice that tide diamonds have appeared. If I click Current Stations, you can see that the current arrows have appeared. I'll click off to close that window. I'm going to go back to highlight marks to make them a little bit easier to see. You can see them there, and if I click on one of these, it opens up a tooltip showing me what the conditions are at that point right now. If I click in here, it opens up the browser. Close the browser. Something I do to make it even easier to see these, because even with the chart with the highlight marks button, the arrows aren't necessarily all that easy to see. Sometimes I turn off the charts. I click on the chart wrench, I click on chart types, and I tell it to hide all charts. Now that makes it pretty easy to see the tide and current stations. I'll zoom out and I'll see they're all over the place. Now again, there are keyboard shortcuts for all of this. For tides, it's the letter T. So if I type a T, tides turn off. I type T again, turns back on. It's a toggle switch. Same with currents. Type C for current, turns them off. Type it again, turns them back on. How do I turn my charts back on? I can type V for vector. It's in highlight marks mode. Or I can type R for raster. Remember all those keyboard shortcuts.